Yes, my wife gave me an STD, after how many years of marriage? Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. After the checkup and a few tests, the doctor called me into his office. He looked serious. James, I need to ask you some personal questions, he said. They're not easy, but the law requires it. I was confused. What does the law have to do with this pain? I asked. He paused, then said, James, you have an STD. It's treatable and will go away, but it's still an STD. His words hit me like a freight train. My mind was spinning, the word STD echoing in my head. How was this even possible? I'd never cheated on my wife, not once. James, are you okay? The doctor asked. No, I'm not okay, Doc. I snapped. How could I have an STD? I've never cheated on my wife. This doesn't make sense. The doctor nodded gravely. That's what we need to figure out. Who have your sexual partners been recently? My wife, I said, my voice shaky. She's the only one. My stomach churned, and before I knew it, I was reaching for the trash can he slid in front of me. I threw up right there in his office. It took me a moment to pull myself together, but when I did, the realization hit me hard. My wife had to be the one who gave me the STD. Dr. Harris, who had been our family doctor for years and even delivered our kids, looked genuinely sorry. James, I hate to say this, but with you traveling so much for work, well, I'm sorry this happened. So, what do I do now? I asked, my voice trembling. My wife's been cheating on me. What's the next step? You'll need to talk to her, he said. She has to come in for treatment. Hopefully it hasn't progressed too far for her. We also need to know who her partners have been. And James, you need to be completely honest with me. Have you been with anyone else? I told you, Doc, I said firmly. I've never been with another woman. He nodded. Then we have to assume she gave it to you. She'll need to tell us who she's been with, and if it's more than one person, we'll need to contact them. They have a right to know. The CDC will also get involved, and there might be an investigator assigned to follow up. I sat there stunned. The woman I'd been married to for 12 years, the mother of my kids, had betrayed me. My marriage was crumbling right in front of me, and I didn't even know what I'd say when I got home. Why had she done this? We had been together for over a decade, and with the kids getting older, I'd been looking forward to spending more time with her. Apparently, she had other ideas. After Dr. Harris finished talking, I left his office in a daze. He seemed worried I might do something drastic, but I was too numb to act on anything. I went home early for the first time in weeks. When I got there, her car was gone, and I had the house to myself. The kids were still at school, so I had a couple of hours to sit and think. I collapsed into my chair in the living room, staring into space. I wanted a drink, anything to dull the pain, but I couldn't, not with the antibiotics. My mind kept circling back to the same questions. Why had she done this? When did she decide I wasn't enough? My mind was racing, a chaotic mess of anger and heartbreak. Then I heard the front door open, followed by her laughter, light and carefree, as if nothing was wrong. That laugh vanished the second she spotted me sitting there. Right behind her was her boyfriend, a scrawny guy who froze in the doorway like a deer in headlights. Oh, James, she said, her voice uneasy. What are you doing home in the middle of the day? I clenched my fists, my anger bubbling to the surface. Why don't you tell Loverboy there that he gave you an STD? Her eyes widened, and his face turned pale. My rage was boiling over. Had she really brought this punk into our home? Into my bed? What are you talking about, James? She stammered. You. I spat, my voice low and furious. You gave me an STD. I had to go to the doctor today because I was in so much pain. That piece of trash standing behind you gave it to you. You both need to see a doctor right now. How dare you call me? She started, but I cut her off. That's exactly what you are. A streetwalker. I yelled, my voice shaking with fury. You, my faithful wife, have been screwing this punk, and now you've brought his mess into my life. I've never cheated on you, never even thought about it, but here I am, dealing with the consequences of your choices. Now get the hell out of here and go to the doctor. Both of you. Her face crumpled as tears spilled down her cheeks. She knew she'd been caught. Her boyfriend didn't waste any time. He bolted out the door like his pants were on fire. I slumped back into my chair, too tired to yell anymore. I'm so sorry, James, she sobbed. I didn't know. Stop, I interrupted. Just get out. I don't want your apologies, and I definitely don't want your excuses. Go to the doctor and tell them exactly who you've been with. They need to know. I was done. Drained. I couldn't take any more. She stood there, tears streaming down her face, but when she saw I wasn't going to say anything else, she finally turned and left. A few minutes later, I heard our car start and pull out of the driveway. I sat there in silence, staring into the emptiness that was now my life. In just one morning, everything had come crashing down. 14 years of marriage gone. My wife had cheated on me. She'd given me an STD. I couldn't take it anymore. Despite what the doctor had said about the antibiotics, I poured myself a double bourbon. It went down fast. So did the next 4. Eventually, I found myself sitting on the bed in our room, my mind a blur. That's when I heard the kids come home. Their voices drifted up the stairs, full of the usual after-school chatter, but they stopped abruptly when they saw me. Dad? What are you doing home so early? Emily asked, her tone full of concern. Oliver's eyes were wide. Are you okay? You've been drinking. My oldest, Emily, was nearly 17. She looked at me like she knew something was wrong but was afraid to ask. Oliver, my middle child, looked genuinely confused, while little Lily just stood there, clutching her backpack. I looked at them, my kids, Emily, Oliver, and Lily, and felt a wave of guilt and sadness crash over me. How was I going to explain any of this to them? Lily, my youngest at 9, looked worried. Don't throw up, Dad, she said, her little voice trembling. I'll get you a bowl or something. Just don't throw up in front of me. I managed a weak smile. I'm fine, Lily. Really. Look, kids, I caught something your mom might have passed to me. She's at the doctor now getting checked out. She'll be back soon. Just go work on your homework or whatever. It'll all work out. Oliver and Lily exchanged uncertain glances before leaving the room, clearly relieved to get away. I must have been a sight to them, sitting there in my suit, half-drunk. They'd never seen me like this before, not once. Shame settled heavy on my chest. I loved my kids with everything I had, and I'd always tried to teach them right from wrong, that honesty mattered most. And now here I was, a wreck. When I looked up, I realized Emily hadn't left. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, a little distance away. I blinked, confused at first, then noticed she was crying. Emily, sweetheart, what's wrong? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It's nothing serious, just a little bug. I'm sure it'll be fine. She shook her head, wiping at her eyes. No, Dad. It's not fine. I should have told you last month, I should have told you. Her voice was so soft, I had to strain to catch her words. Told me what, honey? About Mom, she whispered. And some guy. I saw them together. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I was supposed to be at school, she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. But the snowstorm cancelled classes. I got home around 10 in the morning, not long after Lily left. I came in quietly because I wanted some time to myself before Mom asked me to do chores. Then, I heard her in the guest bedroom. She was making noises. Emily's voice cracked, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I peeked in, Dad. She was in there with him. He was on top of her. She was begging him. Her face crumpled, and she broke down completely. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have told you. I pulled her into my arms, holding her close as she sobbed. My heart ached for her, my sweet girl, burdened with something no child should ever have to witness. As I held her, a strange thought surfaced, a small sense of relief. At least it hadn't happened in our bed. But the betrayal still cut deep, leaving me raw. Eventually, Emily pulled away at my urging to freshen up in the bathroom. I sat there, my mind spinning. What now? Divorce? Throw her out? Leave town? My world had fallen apart, and I felt hollow inside. Rachel, the only woman I'd ever loved, had torn my heart to pieces. Later, Emily pulled together dinner for the kids. I wasn't hungry, but I sat at the table with them while they ate. Oliver was full of questions, his curiosity bubbling over, but a sharp look from Emily shut him down. I wasn't ready to talk, not yet. The kids left the table after eating, their voices fading as they disappeared upstairs. But Emily stayed back. She glanced at me and, as if reading my thoughts, said quietly, Dad, if you and Mom end up getting a divorce, we want to stay with you. She's changed a lot. Her words hit me hard, but I nodded. Thank you, sweetheart. I don't know what's going to happen yet, but I'll remember what you said. Moments later, I heard my car pull into the driveway. Emily gave me a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder before heading upstairs. Rachel walked into the kitchen with a look I'd never seen before. Her face was streaked with tears, her expression full of guilt and sadness. She sat down across from me at the table, her hands trembling as she wiped at her cheeks. James, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. She was fidgeting with her car keys, her hands trembling. So, what did the doctor say? I stared at her for a long moment, my jaw tight. I have an STD. The same one you gave me. The same one you probably got from one of your boyfriends. Her face crumpled as she tried to hold back tears. Oh, James, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't mean for this to happen. I held up my hand, cutting her off. Don't. Just don't. I don't want to hear your excuses or lies right now. I can't even look at you. My voice was low but shaking with anger. I fought every instinct to yell, to lash out. A part of me wanted to scream at her, another part wanted to do something worse. But I couldn't let myself go there, not in front of my kids, not with her. I needed space. Look, I said, exhaling sharply. It's too late for you to find somewhere else to stay tonight. You can sleep in the guest bedroom. Go get your stuff, all of it, and move it in there. Tomorrow, I'm going into work to arrange some time off. We'll figure out the rest later. Just not now. Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked away. I headed straight to my den, my sanctuary, and sank into the chair behind my desk. The weight of everything finally hit me, and I broke down, sobbing like a child. Through the closed door, I could hear Rachel moving around the house. Eventually, the noise stopped, and a heavy silence fell over everything. I pulled myself together enough to go to the bedroom. The sight of the empty closet and the open, barren dresser drawers hit me like a punch to the gut. It was all so empty, just like me. I lay awake all night, my mind a hurricane of thoughts and emotions. By morning I felt like hell, but I forced myself into the shower and went to work early. The stillness of the office gave me time to think. After a while, I made a decision, one that would change everything for my family. I made a few calls, took care of some arrangements, and secured 3 weeks off. Then I headed back home. When I walked in, Rachel was sitting in the living room, her face blotchy and red from crying. Used tissues littered the end table beside her. She looked up at me with those tear-filled eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of something. Pity? Sadness? I didn't know. James, she started hesitantly. Where do we go from here? I know you must hate me. I haven't been a good wife. I held up my hand again. Stop. Just stop. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? She dropped her gaze, fiddling with the tissue in her lap. I never let them take me in our bed. I promise. It was always them? I cut her off, my voice cold. Them as in more than one? So it wasn't just one guy. It was several. Rachel, you're unbelievable. Did you ever even love me? Her head shot up, tears streaming down her face. I've always loved you, James. Always. But I felt so lonely, so ugly. Alex, he was the first. He made me feel alive, beautiful. He treated me like I was special, like a queen. Her voice cracked as she spoke. And then, it spiraled. One man turned into another, and another. And God help me, the more reckless it got, the more I craved it. I don't know why. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. I stayed rooted to the spot, a storm of emotions brewing inside me. Anger, disgust, heartbreak, and disturbingly love. Yes, I still loved her, even now, even after everything. But I knew that wouldn't last. It couldn't. Look, I said finally, my voice raw. What you did is the worst thing you could have done. Not just to me, but to the kids. To yourself? I don't understand it, and frankly, I don't care to. You cheated on me, not once, but with multiple men. And now, because of that, you've got an STD. You're sorry now, but I can't shake the feeling that you're just sorry you got caught. Not sorry you betrayed me, just sorry you got found out. That's not true, she cried, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. I've always loved you. Loved me so much you had to go find other men to make you feel better about yourself? I shot back. Don't be cruel, James, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Rachel sat there, tears streaming down her face. I know I've messed everything up between us. You have every reason to hate me, James. But is there any chance for us? Any hope at all? I still love you. I do. I can't live without you. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You love me? Really? Do you think I'm some kind of fool? Take that love and shove it right where you seem to like everything else. Your so-called love gave me an STD, Rachel. What kind of love makes a wife sleep with every Tom, Dick, and Harry? Should I expect a Lucas or Andre to pop up next? I could see the hurt in her eyes, but it didn't faze me. Not anymore. I loved you too, Rachel. I really did. But right now, I'm pretty sure my love for you is dead. By tomorrow morning, I'll flush whatever's left of it down the toilet. And no, I don't think I can ever forgive you. Once we're divorced, you can shower all your love on whoever you want. James, please. She sobbed, her voice breaking. Don't say that. We can fix this. I'll never cheat on you again. I'll do anything to stay with you. Anything at all. Anything? I scoffed, the anger bubbling up. Then unscrew yourself, Rachel. Oh wait, you're not a light bulb. Guess that's not possible. Look, this isn't going to work. I don't do second chances, and you already had yours. How can I ever trust you again? I never thought you'd cheat on me to begin with, yet here we are. She tried to interrupt, but I kept going. Even if I wanted to, Rachel, what kind of life would that be for either of us? I'd always be checking up on you, wondering if you were out with someone else, doubting every word that came out of your mouth. I can't live like that, and I doubt you could either. I thought about this all last night and today, and I've made up my mind. You can stay here in the guest bedroom for now, but if I were you, I'd start looking for somewhere else to live. No, please, James. She begged, her voice raw and desperate. Just one more chance, that's all I'm asking for. Please, I'll do better. I'll be better. Her sobs filled the room, but they didn't move me. I felt nothing. Screw you, Rachel. I gave you 12 years, the best 12 years of my life, and you threw them away for some cheap thrill I couldn't give you. You ruined us, not me. So either figure out how to fix yourself, or start packing your things. Let me explain, she pleaded, her voice trembling. If you just let me tell you. I don't want to hear it, Rachel. I don't need your story about how you cheated on me. Somehow, you twist it into being my fault, and I'm not buying that. I was here for you, always. I loved you completely, gave you everything I could. Yeah, I traveled for work, but I always made time for you. I was always there when it mattered. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? You wanted someone else. Well, now you can have them. I hope they give you everything you're looking for because you'll never get it from me again. The next 2 months were pure hell. We lived in the same house, barely speaking to each other. During that time, I found out the truth about what started it all. Rachel had gotten bored with our love life, bored with me. One day, while I was away on a work trip, Rachel had gone out with one of her single friends. They ended up at a bar, got picked up by a couple of guys, and before she knew it, she woke up naked in bed with one of them. She blamed the alcohol for clouding her judgment, and of course, blamed me for being gone too often. The truth? I was barely out of town overnight, maybe once a month, and even then, it was usually just for a night. We had a massive argument when she confessed. Things went downhill fast after that. One night, she crossed a line I didn't think was possible. She came home with a date and took him straight into the guest bedroom, the room she had been sleeping in since everything fell apart. That night, I came home to find Emily sitting on the porch, holding her brother and sister close. All three of them had tears streaming down their faces. What's going on, kids? Why are you out here? Emily looked up, her eyes full of anger and pain. Mom brought a date home, Dad. They're so loud, we couldn't stay inside. Hearing those words felt like a punch to the gut. I clenched my fists and stormed into the house. The noise from the guest bedroom was unmistakable. Without hesitation, I kicked the door in. The guy, startled and caught between her legs, looked up at me, confused. Rachel's face went pale when our eyes met, and then, she started to cry. The guy scrambled up, trying to act tough. Hey man, what the hell? I didn't let him finish. Grabbing him by the neck, I drove my knee into his groin. He doubled over in pain, and I yanked him forward before shoving him to the floor. While he was down, I kicked him a few more times, his groin, his side, even his face. When you can stand, I growled. Get dressed and get the hell out of my house. You've got 2 minutes to leave, or you'll regret it. Rachel tried to intervene. James, wait, it's not what you think. Oh, Rachel, my sweet, faithful wife. Spare me the lies. And since I'm not thinking, why don't you do yourself a favor and start packing? Because if I do start thinking, it'll be about how to make a body disappear. You've got 30 minutes to get out of here. I should have kicked you out the day this all started. And for God's sake, our kids were out on the porch because you were making so much noise. Do you understand that? Your kids now know what a disgrace you are. So get up, pack your things, and leave. A while later, she came out of the bedroom, a bag slung over her shoulder. The kids and I were still on the porch. She walked toward the car but stopped when she noticed all 4 tires were flat. Call a cab, I said with a smirk. That car's not going anywhere. I wonder who could have done that. Rachel looked at me, tears in her eyes, but before she could say anything, Emily stepped forward. Rachel, probably thinking she was about to get a hug, took a step closer. What happened next shocked even me. Emily slapped her hard. The sound echoed in the night, and Rachel stumbled back, falling to the ground. You're a whore. Emily spat, her voice shaking with rage. You're worse than a street hooker. You're dead to me. Then, to my surprise, Emily spit right in her face. Rachel sat there, stunned. She looked to me, maybe hoping I'd defend her. But I just crossed my arms and said, Good job, Emily. That's my girl. After Emily kicked her bag onto the street, she took it a step further. She dragged Rachel's things out, scattering her clothes across the pavement. I didn't stop her. We walked back inside, leaving Rachel to figure out her next steps alone. The divorce came quickly, almost too easily. Rachel didn't fight it. I ended up with the house and full custody of the kids. She got a small share of my retirement, a third of our savings, and her car. That was about it. My lawyer said I could have pushed for more, but despite her betrayal, we'd spent 12 years together where, as far as I knew, she had been faithful. I felt obligated to be fair, at least for the woman I thought she used to be. The kids? They missed her, but they were furious too. Emily, Oliver, and Lily all had their own moments of seeing Rachel with other men, and that left scars I hadn't anticipated. For a while, their anger toward her was a wall we all had to climb over. Rachel was granted visitation, 2 days a month and a week during the summer. The kids never wanted to go, though. Emily made her disdain clear, treating her mother with biting sarcasm and outright contempt. I eventually put all 3 of them into counseling, which helped. They weren't fully healed, but at least they began to cope better. Our new life as a single-parent household took shape slowly. Rachel started to fade into the background, still visiting the kids but never me. I preferred it that way. Any time she crossed my mind, the pain of her betrayal hit me all over again, as sharp and fresh as ever. 2 years went by faster than I expected. Emily turned 19, blossoming into a confident, beautiful young woman. Oliver was growing into a fine young man, maturing every day. And Lily, well, she was showing every sign of being just as stunning as her older sister. One evening, Emily sat me down for a talk. Dad, it's time you started dating again. Her words caught me off guard, but she wasn't wrong. The next day at work, I found myself glancing around, taking notice of the women in the office building. It felt foreign, like I was stepping into a world I didn't recognize. I hadn't flirted in years, let alone dated. The idea of rejection gnawed at me. In business, I was confident, sure of myself. But Rachel had wrecked my self-esteem in ways I hadn't even realized. I felt unworthy, hesitant, and completely out of my depth. Then, one afternoon, I overheard 2 women talking by the copier. Oh, you know, Dan is sexy, but he's way too young. Ted? Ugh, total player. Jim, though, now he's something else. So strong, so handsome, but... God, he's cold as ice. His ex really did a number on him. It's such a waste because he's such a good man. Tell me about it. I wish my husband was half the man Jim is. If I were single, I'd be all over him. At first, I was embarrassed. Then, a strange sense of pride crept in. I never thought of myself as a catch, but clearly, someone out there did. I slipped back into my office, not letting on that I'd overheard them. That night, I sat in my den nursing a drink, lost in thought. It had been ages since I'd done something like that. I missed the connection, the companionship, the love. Later, Emily came home from a date. She walked in with a wide grin and sat across from me. Dad, she said, eyes sparkling, I've found the perfect woman for you. Her confidence caught me by surprise. Oh, have you now? She nodded enthusiastically. You'll thank me later. She's smart, beautiful, sexy, and successful, Emily said, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. Best part? She's rich and looking for someone too. Emily, I appreciate the thought, but I can find my own dates. She rolled her eyes. Yeah, sure, because you've been doing so much dating lately, Dad. Look, I'm not looking for money. That's not what matters to me. I know, but come on, Dad. It wouldn't hurt if the woman you're dating happens to be successful and gorgeous, would it? I sighed, shaking my head. All right, tell you what. If I haven't sorted myself out and found a date within a month, you can set me up with this woman of yours. But it's just a casual dinner, no strings attached. A whole month? How about a week? 1 month, Emily. Take it or leave it. Fine, she said, pouting. But I'm marking it on the calendar, and the very day that month is up, you're going on a date with her. Trust me, Dad, you'll love her. I know I do. I chuckled despite myself. Her enthusiasm was almost contagious, but deep down, I wasn't entirely comfortable with my daughter playing matchmaker. Who was this woman anyway? How had Emily met her? And what kind of connection did they have for Emily to feel so strongly about her? A few days later, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I figured I'd try asking out someone I already knew, Sophie, one of the women I'd overheard at the copier. She was single, professional, and seemed nice. And before you ask, no, I'd never even think about coming between someone and their spouse. After what happened with Rachel, that was a hard line for me. Unfortunately, my execution left a lot to be desired. It started out as a normal business conversation. So, the contract will need to be signed and notarized then? Sophie asked. Yes, I replied, feeling confident. 2 copies, one for the first party and one for us. Then we'll DHL them out. And then, like an idiot, I blurted. Say, would you like to go to dinner with me tonight? Her expression froze. 2 copies. Wait, what? Did you just ask me to dinner? I cleared my throat, realizing how awkward I sounded. Yeah? If you're free, I thought. That's short notice, she said, standing straighter and glancing around the room like she was looking for an escape route. Her reaction was painfully obvious, confusion mixed with discomfort. She didn't know what to say, and honestly, neither did I. Oh, it's fine, I stammered. I understand. Forget I said anything. See you later, Sophie. And just like that, I bolted. I practically ran back to my office, heart pounding, hoping she wouldn't report me for harassment or something. Looking back, I knew I'd blown it. I hadn't even considered the age gap. She was maybe 32, and I was 40. Not a massive difference, but still. The rest of the day was a nightmare. I couldn't look her in the eye, and I avoided her like the plague. That night, I sat in my den, nursing another drink and feeling like a complete fool. Dating was turning out to be harder than I'd expected. That night, I sat quietly on the couch, feeling defeated. Emily and Oliver tried their best to cheer me up, cracking jokes and being playful, but they didn't know what was bothering me. Lily, on the other hand, came and sat beside me. She always had this way of breaking through my defenses. For someone so young, she had an uncanny knack for understanding people, especially me. She nudged me gently. All right, Dad, spill it. What's got you looking so miserable? I sighed, hesitant at first, but eventually I told her about my embarrassing attempt to ask Sophie out. Lily burst into laughter, and soon Emily joined in when she overheard. Dad, you probably overthought the whole thing, Emily said, grinning. Yeah, Lily chimed in. You can't just spring a date on someone like that. She was probably caught off guard. Maybe she had plans she couldn't cancel, like a hair appointment or something. Or maybe, Emily added, smirking, she just thought you were being awkward, which, let's face it, you kinda were. I gave her a mock glare. For such a young lady, you sure seem to know a lot about this stuff, Lily. She shrugged. Dad, I am a girl, remember? I know how we think. It's not rocket science. I chuckled. Well, maybe it is for me. I haven't dated anyone since, well, let's just say a long time ago. Back then, music and fashion were completely different. Emily's eyes lit up with mischief. Oh yeah, Dad, disco, right? You were probably rocking platform shoes and a polyester leisure suit. I groaned, and Oliver jumped in, grinning. How'd you even walk in those high-heeled shoes, Dad? Did you fall a lot? I pointed at him. You should stay out of this, Oliver. Emily laughed harder. Do you still have the suit, Dad? You could bring it back. It might be retro cool now. They all knew I'd hated disco with a passion and had never worn anything but Levi's and boots back in the day. Still, I couldn't help but laugh along with them. Then I leaned in and started tickling Emily and Lily, and before long, it turned into an all-out pillow fight. By the end of the night, we were all out of breath and grinning like fools. They'd done what they set out to do, cheer me up and help me forget about my disastrous day. The next day at work, though, was rough. Sophie avoided me, and I felt like I'd ruined what had always been a good professional relationship. I stayed in my office as much as possible, keeping my head down and tackling the mountain of paperwork on my desk. The week dragged on, and then the next 2 weeks were consumed by a work trip to Austin. I didn't travel much anymore, but this was one of those rare occasions when it couldn't be avoided. 2 nights before I left, I was packing when all 3 kids wandered into my room. We talked about random things for a while, just enjoying each other's company, when Oliver suddenly blurted out, "Hey Dad, while you're in Austin, you should find a hooker." Emily and Lily immediately rolled their eyes in unison. "Seriously, Oliver?" Emily said, exasperated. "Gross," Lily added, glaring at him. Before their argument could escalate, I held up a hand to stop them. "All right, enough. Let's talk about this." I sat down on the edge of the bed, looking at Oliver with a mix of amusement and disapproval. "First of all," I said, "I'd never do that. I might be lonely, but I'm not desperate. That's just not who I am." Oliver shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't mean it like that, Dad. I just thought maybe. I don't know, you could get some relief without having to go through all the hassle." I sighed. "I get what you're saying, but it's not for me. Besides, I've had an STD once in my life, and I'm not taking any chances again." Oliver's eyes widened. "Oh, I didn't think about that." "Yeah, well, now you know. And thanks for the suggestion, but no thanks." There was a brief pause before Emily broke the silence. "Dad, have you thought about asking Sophie out again?" In the end, the hardest part was what it did to the kids. What a legacy to leave them with. After the funeral, they moved away, and Emily lost touch with Rachel not long after. "Dad, I love you, and I want to see you happy again," Emily said one evening. "I really think having a good woman in your life could bring back the spark you used to have." "All right, Emily," I replied, smiling at her. "So, who's the lucky lady you've got in mind? What's her name again?" "Oh, her name's Charlotte," she said, grinning. "She's great, about 5 feet 9 inches, really fit, and super nice. We've talked about you, actually. She seems really interested in getting to know you, Dad. I think you'll like her, I really do." "Charlotte, huh?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "All right, Emily, go ahead and set it up. Let's see if your matchmaking skills are any good." Emily gave me a big smile and wrapped me in a hug before darting out of the room. A few minutes later, I could hear her on the phone, laughing and chatting, probably with Charlotte. After that, the house settled into its usual rhythm, the kids buried in their homework while I kicked back in the den to relax. The next day at work, Sophie walked into my office and quietly shut the door behind her. "James, we need to talk," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "We've been tiptoeing around each other ever since you asked me out. It's starting to mess with our working relationship, and we can't let that happen." She was right, and I knew it. I had been avoiding her, and the whole situation, because the thought of talking about my clumsy attempt to ask her out made me cringe. It wasn't something I was proud of. "I know, Sophie," I said, feeling the shame rise up in me. "You're right. I've been dodging you ever since that day. Honestly, I was embarrassed, and I made it worse by not addressing it sooner. Look, I shouldn't have asked you out like that. It was impulsive and unprofessional, and I wasn't thinking clearly. I haven't dated in over 17 years, and well, let's just say I'm a bit rusty." Sophie sat there, her expression unreadable, which only made me more anxious. I wasn't used to feeling this way. I was usually confident and direct. But now, I felt like a kid caught doing something dumb, trying to explain my way out of trouble. "James, wait," she said, cutting me off. "When you asked me out, I was caught off guard. You'd never given me any reason to think you were interested in me like that. Then, when you got flustered and took off, I had no idea what to say or do. I'll be honest, I've been avoiding you too. I thought maybe you were playing some kind of weird game. But I need to tell you something, you're a very handsome, attractive man. I admire you, both personally and professionally. And yes, I'd be honored to go on a date with you. I blinked, stunned. Wait, you'd actually go out with me? Seriously? She laughed, a low, throaty laugh that sent a shiver down my spine. Then she reached across the desk and rested her hands on mine. Yes, you silly man, I would, she said, her eyes sparkling. But you have to admit, the way you did it was abrupt. 1 minute, we're talking about a contract, and the next, you're asking me out. I mean, come on, I deserved at least a little build-up, don't you think? I know, I said, shaking my head. I wasn't thinking straight. You're just so beautiful, and I got nervous. Nervous? She asked, her smile widening. You. Go on. Dressed in my best suit, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was completely out of my league. Almost every man in the room looked sharper than me, even the waiters. That sinking sensation in my gut told me this was shaping up to be a disaster. I half hoped Charlotte had changed her mind or simply forgotten about the date. As the minutes ticked by, my hope grew stronger. 20 minutes passed, and then I noticed a ripple of movement in the restaurant. Heads were turning, murmurs rippled through the room, and in she walked. She was stunning, a blonde bombshell in an elegant, form-fitting dress that managed to be classy and undeniably alluring at the same time. Every man in the place was watching her as she glided forward, following the maitre d'. I couldn't help but wonder who the lucky guy was that had managed to snag a date with someone who looked like her. I silently prayed I wasn't gaping or drooling as I watched her approach. Then it happened. She stopped right at my table, and the maitre d' pulled out the chair for her. My heart nearly stopped. She was my date. She extended her hand gracefully, her voice smooth and confident. You must be James. I'm Charlotte. Emily has told me so much about you. And I must say, she wasn't exaggerating, you're just as handsome as she described. I blinked, stunned. No, you're not late at all. I think I just got here a little early. My words were clumsy, and I could already hear Emily teasing me in my head for losing my cool. So much for making a good impression. Charlotte smiled warmly, her composure a stark contrast to my awkwardness. I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long. No, not at all. I stammered, feeling like I'd forgotten how to form coherent sentences. My brain felt like it had short-circuited. The maitre d' mercifully stepped in. Would the gentleman like to order drinks now? I looked at Charlotte, hoping she'd take the lead, but her expression had a playful, almost mischievous edge to it, like a cat watching a mouse squirm. Yes, wine? I said, fumbling for words. A glass of wine for both of us, I think. Don't you? I glanced at her nervously. Oh, Samuel, Charlotte said with a smile, addressing the maitre d' like they were old friends. Why don't you surprise me? You always do such a wonderful job. Of course, ma'am, he replied smoothly. I'll bring the house specialty. I think you'll both enjoy it. Perfect, Charlotte said, her voice calm and confident. Very good, sir, Samuel said, nodding at me. And with that, he disappeared, leaving me alone with her again. I was staring at everything but Charlotte, my glass, the silverware, the walls, you name it. She sat there quietly, waiting for me to speak, her gaze steady and patient. The problem was, I didn't know what to say. My mind was a blank slate, and the longer the silence dragged on, the more I felt like I was sinking. She was studying me closely, and then, as if she'd reached some kind of conclusion, she gave me a small, knowing smile. You know, she said softly, once our wine arrives, maybe we could leave and go somewhere more relaxed. I think we'd both feel better in something casual, don't you? Her suggestion caught me completely off guard. Well, I'm not sure where we could go. God, you're just so beautiful. Honestly, you are. I blurted out, unable to keep it to myself. She really was stunning, almost unreal. The diamonds on her fingers and wrists sparkled under the soft light, reminding me how far out of my league she was. She had this air of elegance, wealth, and confidence that made me feel like a small-town guy who'd somehow wandered into the wrong room. She laughed, a soft, almost musical sound. Oh, I do love hearing that. Any man who thinks I'm beautiful can keep talking as long as he likes. Go on, she said, her tone teasing yet warm. That laugh of hers, combined with the way she looked at me, made me melt on the spot. She was so kind, so patient, even as I sat there fumbling my way through this date. I could feel my face burning red, I was blushing like a schoolboy. Well, I stammered, you really are gorgeous. Honestly, I bet every man in this room tonight is thinking the same thing. And here I am, probably making a fool of myself in front of you. I haven't been on a date in over 17 years. She smiled knowingly. Emily mentioned that. She told me you might be a little unsure of yourself tonight. And so far, I'd say she was spot on. I chuckled nervously. That sounds about right. I do owe you an apology, though. She continued, her voice softer now. I might have set you up a little. I wanted to meet you somewhere I felt comfortable, and Samuel, the maitre d', is an old friend of mine. He was keeping an eye on you when you arrived and while you waited. That was unfair of me. I apologize for the wait and, well, for the test. Test? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She nodded. Emily's been encouraging me to go out with you for quite a while now. And I love your daughter, she's incredibly bright and has such a good head on her shoulders. I've been thinking about asking her to come work for me once she finishes college. Wait, I said, trying to process everything. How long has Emily been trying to set us up? Oh, almost a year now, Charlotte admitted with a smile. At first, I was skeptical. A woman in my position has to be careful. There have been people in the past who've tried to take advantage of me. But the more I got to know Emily, the more I realized how special she is. And she's clearly very proud of you. I can see why. I nodded, feeling a mix of pride and awkwardness. Emily is an amazing kid. She definitely didn't get her smarts from me, though, I said with a small laugh. And as for my wife, well, I've moved on from all that. It's been a long time. I just never really had the time, or the nerve, to start dating again. Honestly, dating scares the hell out of me. Charlotte gave me a sympathetic smile. I understand. Meeting someone for the first time is always nerve-wracking, no matter how much you've heard about them beforehand. And I feel guilty too. I didn't handle this very well. Making you sit here and wait while I had Samuel size you up probably wasn't the best way to start a date. I shrugged, trying to play it off. To be honest, I'm not really used to places like this. It's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but I usually go for something more casual, spur of the moment. This is a little outside my comfort zone, but hey, this is where the date was set, so we'll make the best of it. Charlotte leaned forward slightly, her expression softening. How about this? We'll enjoy our wine, then take a walk along the dock. Maybe something will strike us, and we can go from there. Sound good? I smiled, finally starting to relax. Yeah, that sounds great. A walk sounds perfect. She was doing her best to put me at ease, and honestly, it was working. I had been so tightly wound up about this date, overthinking everything, that I'd practically psyched myself out. Maybe Emily had warned me about all this, and I just missed the signals. Either way, Charlotte turned out to be nothing like the image I'd built up in my head. She wasn't arrogant or standoffish like I'd feared a self-made, successful woman might be. She was warm, approachable, and genuinely kind. The date ended up being fun. And that wasn't something I'd expected. Charlotte was incredibly intelligent, and we chatted about everything, life, work, family. She shared how she'd met Emily at a school function where she'd been invited as a guest speaker. Charlotte had given a talk to Emily's classmates about business, and what skills companies look for in young professionals. Apparently, Emily had been the one peppering her with questions during the Q&A and had even arranged to meet with her afterward. They'd stayed in touch ever since, building what sounded like a close friendship. By the end of the evening, I felt lighter, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. Charlotte wasn't just beautiful, she was grounded, kind, and seemed genuinely interested in me. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to hope for something more. When I got home, the house was dark except for a single lamp in the living room. Emily was waiting up, sitting cross-legged on the couch like a teenager brimming with excitement. So, Dad? She asked eagerly. How'd it go? Isn't she beautiful? And nice too? I smiled, setting my keys down on the counter. Yes, Emily. She's beautiful, just like you said. And very nice. You were right about her. Emily shot her fist into the air triumphantly, pumping it like she just scored a game-winning goal. Yes, she exclaimed. I chuckled, shaking my head. Emily, it's not like this is some kind of contest. I don't think you need to act like you just won a championship or something. But I was right, Dad, she said, grinning from ear to ear. You two totally hit it off, didn't you? You like her. That, to me, is a win. A big win. The sight of her fist pumping like a little kid made me laugh, though I was a bit embarrassed. I wasn't sure if she was celebrating me or the fact that she had orchestrated all this. So, Emily asked, her grin turning sly. Did you kiss her? Did she kiss you? What? No, I said quickly, feeling my face flush. It was a first date, Emily. People don't always kiss on the first date, you know. Oh, come on, Dad. She groaned. No kissing at all? Not even a little peck? I raised an eyebrow at her. You sound disappointed. Well, I kinda hoped you two would be all over each other by now, she said, only half joking. I laughed at that, shaking my head. Let's just say I really want to see her again. In fact, we already made plans for next Sunday, a picnic. Emily's grin returned, but it faltered slightly when I added. I also told her I'm planning to take Sophie out too. Just once, to see where things stand. Charlotte seemed okay with it, though. She said she appreciated my honesty. Emily threw her head back dramatically. Oh, Dad, you shouldn't have told her that. And seriously, if you're as interested in Charlotte as you say, why even bother with Sophie? Just cancel and focus on her. I sighed, sitting down across from her. Emily, I'm in no rush. This whole dating thing, it's going to take time. I want to be sure, really sure, about whoever I end up with next. If it ever comes to that. I trailed off, my thoughts drifting to my ex-wife. The familiar ache rose in my chest, duller than it used to be but still very present. Emily's expression softened. Someone you can trust, Dad, she said quietly. That's what you're looking for. Someone you can trust. Unlike Mom. I nodded, my voice barely above a whisper. Yeah. Exactly. There was a long pause, and then Emily stood and wrapped her arms around me tightly. I hugged her back, feeling her warmth and comfort as hot tears pricked at my eyes. You'd think, after all these years, I'd be over what happened with my ex. But every now and then, the pain still crept in, uninvited. When Emily finally pulled back, I saw her cheeks were damp too. You'll get there, Dad, she said softly. I know you will. That small moment with Emily made me feel a little less alone in my pain. It didn't take the hurt away, but it reminded me that my kids were in this with me. I hated that they had to share in this burden, that my pain inevitably became theirs too. At the same time, their love and support, despite everything we'd been through, meant more than I could ever put into words. I'm sorry, Dad, Emily said softly, her voice thick with emotion. I guess I forgot how much Mom's cheating hurt you. I thought you were over it by now. I guess you're not. I shook my head and gave her a small, reassuring smile. Don't be sorry, Emily. You, your brother, and your sister, you've all done so much to help me heal. You've been my rock through all this, even if you didn't realize it. And you're right, it's time for me to move on. Your mom certainly did, a long time ago. The next few months were busy. I found myself constantly dating either Charlotte or Sophie. With Sophie, things progressed quickly, far faster than I'd expected. She was fun, exciting, and full of energy, pulling me into her world at full speed. Charlotte, on the other hand, was taking things slower, setting a steady pace that felt more intentional and deliberate. I didn't mind at all. I was happy to follow her lead. One night, on my fourth date with Sophie, things took an unexpected turn. We were standing at her front door after a fun evening together, sharing a goodnight kiss. Like before, it quickly became more heated. Sophie invited me inside, which had become a bit of a routine for us. I wasn't expecting much more than another intense make-out session before heading home, a rhythm I'd grown accustomed to. I was still hesitant about taking that next step with someone new. The idea of being that vulnerable again, of crossing that line, felt complicated. And on our last date, Sophie had pulled back at the last minute, seemingly just as unsure as I was. So, when she led me inside and excused herself to get more comfortable, I figured we'd just pick up where we left off. I sat on her couch, trying to calm my nerves while also replaying the night in my head. Part of what drew me to Sophie was how she made me feel, alive, youthful, like I was back in college again. The other part? She was a phenomenal kisser. When Sophie returned, I didn't see her at first. My back was to the hallway, and I only realized she was there when she stepped around the couch. And then, my jaw practically hit the floor. She was completely naked. Before I could say a word, she slid onto my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck and kissing me deeply. I was stunned, frozen for a moment as I processed what was happening. The heat of the moment took over, and soon we were making love. But just as things were escalating, I blurted out, Wait. I'm not wearing a condom." Sophie pulled back slightly, looking at me with a mix of amusement and exasperation. "Do you have a disease, James?" What? No, of course not. I stammered. But, the responsible thing to do. The responsible thing to do. She interrupted, her tone teasing but firm. Is to follow through after getting me all worked up like this. I blinked at her, trying to form a coherent response, but she didn't give me the chance. James, she said softly, I'm clean. So are you. And I'm on the pill. There's nothing to worry about. I hesitated, my mind still racing. But how do you know I'm clean? I haven't been tested in over a year. She smiled knowingly. James, don't you remember? Your doctor's office called your work months ago and confirmed your results were clear. I was there when you took that call. That caught me completely off guard. I vaguely remembered the call she was talking about, but I never imagined Sophie would have been paying attention to something so specific. Sophie. I started, but she kissed me again, silencing whatever protests I might have had. Only because you accidentally hit the conference button on your phone that day, Sophie said with a sly smile. And that much got out before you managed to hang up. That was pretty recent. Plus, I happen to know you haven't been with anyone else since then. I blinked, caught off guard. Well, there's Charlotte. Sophie tilted her head knowingly. But I know you two haven't been in a sexual relationship. How do you know that? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Emily told me, she said casually. Emily? Yeah, Sophie said, her tone light but teasing. She mentioned that she wished you and Charlotte. Did I get her name right? Charlotte? Yes. Right, Charlotte. Emily said she wished you two would take the next step in your relationship. I asked her what she meant by that, and she told me that you two hadn't, well, gotten there yet. Sophie leaned in, her eyes sparkling with mischief. That's when I knew I had to work harder to get into your pants before she did. I laughed nervously, unsure how to respond. I don't understand, Sophie. She sighed softly, her expression softening. James, I've wanted to be with you for a long time. And when I finally had the chance, when we finally got to this place, things started to get complicated. Of course, I pushed hard. I had to. I wanted to have you at least once, just once. She paused, her gaze searching mine. Even if we don't work out long term, I needed to know what it would be like to be with you. And now, I'm hoping you might want to share some more special time with me, too. I'd love to love you again. A lot. I hesitated, unsure of how to process everything she was saying. But what if we don't work out, Sophie? She smiled warmly, her honesty disarming me. Oh, James. Sweetheart, I never wanted a let's get married kind of relationship with you. I just wanted something good, a little magic to tide me over until I meet Mr. Right. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. So, I take it I'm not Mr. Right then? She leaned forward, brushing her fingers lightly against my cheek. James, you're the best man I've ever had. You're a great kisser, too. But you and me? We're just friends with benefits, that's all. If you've found someone you could love, someone you want to spend the rest of your life with, you should go for it. I'd miss you, sure, but I wouldn't be hurt. Her words left me speechless for a moment. Sophie, I don't know what to say. I mean, you're beautiful, and I care about you deeply. Do you love me? She asked, raising her eyebrows. I hesitated, then shook my head. Well, not like that. Not love as in wanting to spend my life with you, but as a friend. She laughed, a sound so full of relief it made me grin. Good Lord, James, you scared me for a second there. I was afraid you'd fallen for me. But honestly, you don't feel about me the way you do about Charlotte, do you? Her words hit home, and I knew she was right. Was it that obvious? I asked quietly. Oh, sweetie, Sophie said with a soft smile, brushing a hand through her hair. I hope one day I can find someone like you, for a lover, for a husband. I'm probably making the biggest mistake of my life by not going after you as husband material. But I also know, she paused, her voice softening, that you don't feel for me what you feel for her. And that's okay. That's all right, though, Sophie said with a gentle smile. It'll be fine. We'll be fine. Charlotte is the one who has your heart, and you need to dedicate yourself to her now. You'll be okay. I feel like crap about this, I admitted, the guilt sitting heavy in my chest. Don't, she said firmly. It was just a sexual thing for us. Charlotte is the real deal. Go for it. We parted that night with a bittersweet kiss. Sophie was a wonderful person, and I knew I'd never forget her. She had been honest all along about the friends with benefits arrangement, and for a while, I worried she might want something more. But she didn't. She meant what she said, and I was lucky she did. Now, the road was open. I was free, truly free, to pursue Charlotte fully. It's been 2 years since that night. Sophie and I still work together, and we work well. In fact, I've moved up the corporate ladder, and I made sure to bring Sophie Oliver up with me. She deserved every promotion she's earned, not because of what we shared, but because she's a brilliant, hard-working professional. Sophie eventually met someone she truly loves. They're planning to get married, and she's asked me to give her away since her father passed some years ago. I accepted, honored to play a part in her happiness. She seems truly joyful, and I can only hope her marriage is everything she dreams it will be. As for Charlotte and me, we've been married for about a year now. Emily and Lily were bridesmaids, and Oliver stood proudly by my side as my best man. Charlotte is everything I ever wanted in a wife: kind, smart, funny, and full of love. I'm lucky to have her, and even luckier that she feels the same way about me. Life has been good. Emily is thriving in college, chasing her MBA. Oliver is about to graduate high school, ready to start his college journey. Lily, my youngest, is a junior in high school, and I see so much of Emily in her. Charlotte and the kids have grown close, and the bond they share brings me so much joy. I couldn't have hoped or prayed for a better ending to this chapter of my life. As for my ex-wife? Well, karma has a way of making its rounds. Apparently, she's had her fair share of misfortune. Emily told me Rachel had been hospitalized due to complications from an STD. When Emily shared the news, we both laughed, perhaps more than we should have. It seems my ex won't be around much longer. Good riddance. Anyway, I have to run. Charlotte's calling me. It seems we have a dinner date at the Harbor Lounge. Emily and her boyfriend are joining us, and from what I gather, it's a serious occasion. Knowing Emily, there's a good chance someone's going to pop the big question, or at least ask for my blessing. He's a good kid. I hope they wait until after college to tie the knot, but if they're truly in love, I suppose timing doesn't matter as long as they're happy together. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and subscribe for more content. And tell me, what would you do if you found yourself in a situation like mine? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time.